Ahoy! Today I want to quickly go over the attribute changes. You can see the open beta version on the left side and the live version on the right side, so we can look at the changes side by side. You notice that I'm not starting with strength here because nothing is actually changed in strength, so we're going straight to dexterity. Here we have a couple of changes beginning at 50 dex, and this is specifically a wording change from previously the 5% damage while at full health to now 5% base damage. Most of the ones where it's just that, as far as I can tell, it's just making it more consistent in terms of phrasing, so you actually know what kind of damage is affected, because otherwise it's a bit confusing if you're not getting a raw 5% damage increase, because there are other factors that go into your damage scaling more than just base damage. The same thing is also true for 100 dex, so no actual change here as well. And then we have a change at 300 dex. So the first part is as before, but the second part here is different. Previously you were able to have your ammo returned, but with ammo being removed, that is kind of irrelevant. Instead, now you have a 20% haste for 5 seconds after killing prey, and this effect is removed when a hit is taken. Now, what I'm unsure here is how prey is defined, if this is just any target, or if this is specifically just mobs. So I'm not sure if this will actually be a PvP effect. I would assume, since there are no further specifications, that it's likely something that will affect PvP as well, in which case it would be somewhat of a benefit there, but then if you get hit by anything, you'd lose it too. Could be nice on the PvP island if it actually works. Moving on to intelligence, we have a few changes here as well. The first one is at 50, where we once again have a change here to base damage from previously just damage. Then we have a change at 100, which is also base damage, once again. And at 200, we actually see a somewhat important change, because we have the artifact, the Wizard's Hat, that gives us extra mana, which so far wasn't very valuable, really. It wasn't really anything that most people were going for, because I think it even had some downsides in certain builds, but relatively few upsides. And now, this could be slightly more interesting, because now you gain a percentage of mana on critical hit, rather than a 10 flat value. So 10% mana will always be at least 10 anyways, but it'll be more if your mana pool is bigger, and this is where the artifact comes in. I don't really know if this is going to give it any more viability. I don't really see it, because I think there's just other artifacts that are better, especially some of the newer ones as well. But it is interesting that they're doing this change. Now, I am wondering what's going on in that regard in general, because we kind of still have the same mana system now that we had before, as far as I could tell, on the open beta server. And I recall them saying that they wanted to change the mana system as a whole, that mana has a different value in terms of how and when you're using your abilities. So maybe this is preparation for something they are considering to do in the future still, and at that point it may be of more importance than it is now. Then we have another change at 300 int. This is once again a change of changing the wording from damage to base damage. In the focus department, we have a change at 100, and this is the same thing here. Previously it was 20 flat max mana and mana regen rate, and now you have 20% mana regen rate, and the max mana is increased by 20% of the base value. But with it being increased by 20% of the base value, it'll still just be a flat plus 20, I think, because I don't think the artifact would count towards the base value. So benefits here seem somewhat limited to me, to be honest, unless they're planning to give us more means of increasing the base value somehow. Not sure how that would go, maybe with a general level increase, but yeah, it doesn't really make sense to modify that at the moment, unless there is some outlier case which I'm forgetting about. At this point, a quick reminder: if you're enjoying the video so far, consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you want to get early trading tips for the expansion, then consider supporting me on Patreon. And now we're going down to Constitution, where we see quite a few changes as well. The first one here is at 50 Constitution. What we have here is a change in the secondary effect. So previously this was a 10% reduction on durability loss for tools, and now it's a 1.5% chance at fighting rare items while gathering. I'm not sure if this is different from luck, if this is gathering luck. Like it sounds like this is gathering luck, but I'm not sure why they're not just calling it 1.5% gathering luck, but describing it in this different way. Maybe there's a difference in how this functions. Maybe it's better than gathering luck, possibly. I don't know, but it is there, and I kind of think it's gonna be gathering luck. And you're probably gonna have it in almost every build anyways, because there are very few builds that don't have 50 con. So that's, I guess, nice to have at least. Next we have a change at 100 con. This is once again a base value thing here. Increase your max health by 10% of the base value. Now these are weird. There's a few of them going around at the moment, as well as the health perk itself that has these description changes. And even there, it's not entirely clear if this is referring to base health or not, because health as a perk, for example, also is affected by con. So if you have more con, that increases the value that the health perk scales with. And I think that would be the case for the 100 con perk as well, which then would beg the question if that's still happening. But I think there's like a distinction here between health of the base value and base health, and one of them may consider con and the other one may not, or something. So very, very weird. Not sure about that entirely, but I would assume that the effect will remain as it is, and this is just another wording change, same as the base damage ones. Then we have another con change at 250. Here this is once again base damage reduction from just damage reduction, so just a clarification as well. At 300 con we have an actual impactful change. The grit that you gain while attacking is no longer on all attacks, no longer on light melee attacks, but only on heavy attacks. This is a very significant change for wars, especially where you will simply not see the same bruiser playstyle that is primarily, I would say, revolving around light attacks. They do use heavy attacks with the hammers, but the great axes especially. And I think this will drastically shift many things around. This will affect not only those weapons, but also other weapons may be more favorable because they benefit from heavy attacks more. Obviously, Warhammer still would, but you could, for example, think of Great Sword in that context. And beyond that, combat will look different anyways, especially if we keep the target lock. That would also shuffle various perks around. Mikro pointed out today that backstab, for example, would lose a lot of value if people are using target lock, because they can kind of lock onto you and then you can't really backstab them. And that in combination with this change would lead to an entire different war meta, revolving a lot more on staggers as well, because you are able to get staggers off more often. So flails might see more of a presence in wars. Lots of things that could happen off the back of this. And what's also a bit weird is that most weapons that use heavy attack already have a perk that gives them grit, so they don't technically need the 300 con perk for that anyways. So I'm not entirely sure what's gonna come off that. Bruisers could go for more damage, obviously, but typically with how many attribute points you have these days, there isn't that much of a reason to go significantly more into, say, for example, strength, because you're not getting that much extra damage out of it compared to getting more con and getting more survivability out of that. So up for debate. Either way, a significant change, and we'll have to see how it ends up impacting the game. And then we also have a 350 change, but this is once again a wording change. Base damage reduction, 10% base damage reduction, while you have active grit. So quite a few changes, especially 300 con perk is a very major one. Many other ones that are a bit gimmicky, and we'll see where they take us, but I wanted to talk about them just so you have an overview of what's happening here. And we'll talk about some other changes that I haven't yet addressed in the next days. If you're interested in that, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you get notified. And if you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon and get early trading tips in return. Thanks to my patrons who already do that, and thank you for watching. Duke Sloth, out.